Walt Disney Company and Pixar are in real trouble. It has never been so evident until Elemental came out. Now, things are diving. Audiences are out. They've decided they are not going to stick with the House of Mouse. And even though the media is now learning that they have to report on this honestly for the first time in their entire lives, they still don't get how this is so bad. It's far beyond what just the numbers show. We've got the inside track to tell you exactly what is going on, just as we have been doing, and we're going to tell you why this is far worse than the media is letting on. All right, folks, welcome back to another fantastic day here on the WDW Pro channel. Such a joy to have each and every one of you share your time with us. Today we are here to continue dissecting entertainment, explaining it, and keeping you ahead of the culture curve. Joining me to help with this elemental bomb is Jonas J. Campbell, investigative reporter for thatparkplace.com.
Buddy, good to be here on this bright and shining morning.
There you go. Well, one thing that's not bright and shining is the outlook for Pixar. Jonas, as you know, Pixar has just put out their lowest performing film of all time. We have been predicting this now for months. The media has not. The media is waking up to a new world where none of their predictions come true. And folks, just like you might anticipate, they are going to give you all kinds of reasons which are just as wrong as their predictions were in the past. We will continue, however, to try to give you the information as accurately and as a reflection of reality as possible. Jonas, as we do this, I'm just curious, is this lower than even you anticipated?
With Pixar, I try to keep my expectations low, but 30 million in the first weekend.
Not even 30 million. This is amazing.
That's right. And so this is the estimate, right? We don't have the solid figures yet, right?
We don't have the solid figures quite yet. It is estimated at 29.5 million. However, that has been trending downward. This was at 35 million, which was already a huge embarrassment last week. Before we began seeing this film, now that it's out, we're down to 29.5. I anticipate that this drops into the 28 range tomorrow, which would be Tuesday at the time of release of this video.
We're at the situation where if you decide to sell your car and the price of the car is affected by how much gas you have in the tank, kind of.
There you go. Well, Jonas, as we get ready to hop into this, folks, if you like content like it, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about the notification bell. We begin our journey, and by the way, we will be getting to why this is far worse than the media is telling you. You want to know this, but we begin our journey in Variety. This from June 18th over the weekend by Rebecca Rubin. The Flash disappoints with $55 million debut. Pixar's Elemental flops with $29.5 million in battle of box office lightweights. And before we even get started, let me say out there to everybody, the fact The Flash came in this low, which deserves its own video, and we'll get there, but the fact that it came in so low, and yet Pixar could not pounce, well, that indicates that there's even more troubles with the mouse. All right, so let's hop down here to where we get to the Eternals part, and here's what the article has to say. Elemental, an animated adventure about opposites who attract, added a muted $15 million at the international box office for a global $44.5 million. Unlike The Flash, Elemental has been embraced by its audience. We'll talk about that in a moment. I have seen the film. Who awarded the film an A cinema score, so there's a chance that ticket sales could recover, even slightly in the next few weeks, especially since there isn't much competition from family films on the horizon. Well, Jonas, this is like going to a funeral and looking at the person who's in the coffin and saying, "Well, they don't look so dead." I mean, this is dead.
Yeah, I don't see a Miracle Max coming in to save the day on this one.
This is, and again, in just a moment, we'll talk about the film. I'm going to explain why it is cratering. But one of the fascinating things is people they don't even care. They're not even going to see it, period. It doesn't matter what kind of word of mouth it has. Nobody's going to put eyeballs on it. So here's the next paragraph, and this is where we really want to go. But there's no sugarcoating the debut of Elemental, which landed by far the worst start in modern history of Pixar, ranking below some of its more forgettable attempts, like 2015's The Good Dinosaur. Now, this goes on to list Onwards. That's not fair. Listing Onward is not fair because that happened at the same time that the pandemic occurred. Now, I don't care for Onward. I don't think it would have done amazing, but there's a reason. There's an outside reason that film did what it did. However, Good Dinosaur is a very good comparison. And Jonas, we promised to tell why this is worse than the media is reporting. So let's get straight to that. The average ticket price at the time that The Good Dinosaur came out, $8.43. Average ticket price today, according to statistics we have from AMC, although we cannot give you the exact number because, well, 2023 is not over. Right now, movie ticket prices are on average hovering around $15. Nearly a twofold increase, almost doubling the price of a movie ticket from 2015 to 2023. Now, the reason most people don't know that is because usually these websites just look at the adjusted inflation for the entire economy, not at actual movie ticket prices, which have far outstripped inflation even during this historic inflation period. Now, what that means is that The Good Dinosaur coming in at $40 million and Elemental coming in far below that domestically, of course, looking right now to come in under 30, with movie ticket prices doubled essentially now versus then. We are looking at something like half the audience going to see Elemental versus the previous worst situation that Pixar ever faced. And the funny thing to me about this is that if you are to look at The Good Dinosaur and you are to look at Elemental, I'm not sure that Pixar can go any lower. The Good Dinosaur was perceived as just, I mean, it was mockery for the studio.
And I saw the movie. It is incredibly boring. And poor guy Peter Sohn, I think he was the second director put on Good Dinosaur. He's also the director of Elemental. He's one of those guys that's been at Pixar forever. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this guy, he was the inspiration for the character of Randall. Is that the name of the little boy in Up? Russell, that's right. Sorry. Russell.
Don't make me play trivia over here, Jonas. I know what you're up to. You're checking to see if you're putting me on the spot in front of the audience. Yes, yeah. Russell.
But anyways, he's one of those guys that's almost like a mascot. He's just a sweet guy, very distinct. He's very creative, but he seems to be in charge of all these trouble projects for Pixar. And I think maybe that's a little unfair.
Well, let's touch on that very quickly. You bring up a great point. Before you see the movie Elemental, there is a short, one of those Pixar shorts, and typically those are places where they really push out their artistic best. In this case, they push out what is essentially an episode from the Doug series on Disney Plus, featuring the characters from Up. Now, Carl Fredricksen, voiced by Ed Asner in this short, is just this is a betrayal of his character. In the short, it is a miserably terrible short, and just foolishness. Honestly, it's not worthy of being on the big screen at all. It's probably not worthy of being on Disney Plus, which is really saying something considering it is the home of She-Hulk as well.
Can I ask you,
yes,
Ed Asner has passed away, right?
They had his voice files, I guess, for years, and so it's just now coming out. You can tell though that his voice acting is very tired. Now, that's not to be negative. It's just to say this probably was recorded towards the end. He doesn't sound in good health as he's playing this role, although he's giving it his best. But it is a terrible short, and it's not becoming of what should have been something very nice for Ed Asner.
I know we don't want to stay on it for very long, but the plot point I took issue with. He's going on a date.
Yes, it's a betrayal of the character. He actually, and spoilers here, it doesn't matter, it's a short, but he actually turns around the photo of Ellie at one point. And the entire,
I don't like that at all.
No, it's not good. And it just shows that the people who are behind these sorts of things, they don't understand what made Pixar special, period. They don't get it. Carl would never turn the picture of Ellie around, ever.
No,
And there is a sweet moment at the end, but it's
point of
not.
the film, and it shows me that they have not dealt with people in that situation in their lives before. Usually, when an elderly person, when their spouse passes away and they get in another relationship, it's not the same as a young person doing that, where it's supposed to move on. Usually, especially if it's two people who are in the same situation getting together, there's kind of an acceptance that maybe everybody's not everyone's first choice in this, and that there's still an acknowledgement of the relationship that lasted for as long as it did. That's Cillian. Where's your research on that one? My goodness.
Well, I'll just say that the movie of Up was Carl coming to grips with losing Ellie and still continuing to go on his adventure, that it was okay. He was allowed to do so. But the idea of him going on a date and acting like just a fool, that doesn't make sense to the character. And whenever you decide that you're going to do slapstick goofy comedy where Carl is dyeing his hair black.
No, I hate this.
Yes, it's terrible. So let's talk about Elemental then, because it is better than that short. And I almost feel sorry for the people who are behind Elemental, Jonas, because having seen the movie now, I did not want to do this video without seeing it. And so I left the Renegade Online show on Valiant Renegade's channel last night a little early so that I could go see the film. I felt it would be disingenuous for me to critique it and criticize it without having actually seen it. And of course, that's true. And so I've seen it now. And I feel sorry for the people behind it, because you can tell that they are striving so hard to reach a high level of art. They really are. And there are places in this movie that it's really wonderful. I mean, there are places in this movie where it is ingenious what they have done, and the work that they've put behind the technical part of it is masterful. The problem is they're not capable of sustaining that whatsoever, and the movie is just all over the place. And in fact, when the movie ended, my wife went with me. I wanted to have her take, because this is sort of a rom-com, and she just looked at me and said, "That was weird." And so I don't want to give away anything. I mean, I know that very few people will go see this movie. I don't want to spoil it for people, but I will say that if your movie depends on a situation from Frosty the Snowman as your big ending, you've really failed. And there's no villain. There's no villain at all. But there is something beautiful. I guess that's why this annoys me, is because if this had been in the right hands, if the original Pixar people had been there, this could have been an amazing movie. This could have been up there with WALL-E. But because it's not in those hands, this movie is all over the place. It's weird. The pacing is so wrong. There's nothing to get behind in terms of anticipation. So anyway, I don't want to go too long on it. Probably doesn't deserve it. Mm-hmm. The other strange thing about it, they're trying to tell the story that if two cultures interact with one another, you can get something beautiful. That's supposed to be at the core of this. And so I love that, because that is going up against intersectionality, right? And so I love it. The idea that you can actually merge different people groups into, and find something amazing.
Right. We don't have to have this situation where it's a zero-sum game where one culture wipes out another. The two cultures can interact and incorporate, and it's not appropriation, it's cooperation.
Exactly. But the problem is that this thing is filtered through California culture and values to such a degree that I don't see how they can be successful ever if this is the way that they perceive the world. I'll give you some examples. It is clear in many of the relationships. I mean, there are so many relationships between these weird, strange little characters that make no sense in a world that they inhabit. That world also makes no sense. But there are so many strange relationships where you cannot tell at all what is male and what is female. And I think it's purposefully done. And then there are times when they reference God in this movie, which is also very strange, because they're little elemental creatures. and I don't know what the theology of their world is, and it never even crossed my mind to wonder it until they started bringing up God. And then at the same time, they also pray to a blue flame. I guess they're like Hank Hill. They worship propane. That's all I can figure. There are so many weird. Oh, okay. So they're flying past a window at one point, and they look over, and these little Earth people things are picking the apples off one of another, and then they're embarrassed that that has been seen, and so they try to talk about how nothing weird is going on here. We're just pruning, and it's clearly a sexual innuendo, but it's so weird, and I don't even want to imagine how that works. That I don't know that and then little characters, right? So Ember, the fire girl, and Wade, the water guy, they laugh about it. Ha, 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 ha. And I don't think the audience laughs because the audience is just like, what am I watching here?
Yeah, and it's always great to bring up some kind of innuendo about a adult situation in a movie that is what is Disney's target market? 14 and under, with a specific emphasis on 5 years old.
Well, and right off the bat, I mean, very early in the movie, they make a joke where they substitute a profanity for the word ash.
Oh.
That's the fire joke. Well, who wants their 5-year-old running around, saying that? So again, I just don't. It's like they cannot get out of their own way. They push the most stupid boundaries possible.
What
like
5-year-old can pronounce that correctly, anyways?
Exactly, and now your 5-year-old's running around the house saying that, and you're saying, don't say that. Whereas you could just go to Mario, and none of that happens. You don't have to worry about it. All you have to deal with is your kids singing Peaches over and over and over.
Over and over again.
And to continue on this, the water guy, he is unlikable. They try to make, so what their goal is here is they want the fire girl to be a hot-tempered person, right? And okay, fair enough. That's symbolic. They want the water guy to be in touch with his feelings and weepy and whatever. Nobody is rooting for a guy who is weepy all the time. He literally enters the movie crying. Nobody wants to watch that. Nobody wants to root for him because of that.
So it just happens that they have yet another movie where the male character is emasculated in some way.
Oh yes, definitely. Although this is probably what they view as being the right kind of masculinity. I don't think it is, because there's integrating your emotions, and then there's just emotions flamboyantly, blown everywhere. And if that's how the water culture in this movie is, fine. And it is, but it's too much. It's just too stupid. And again, there's no villain for them to fight against at all. Their villain is a leak. I'm being honest, people.
Is it a personified leak, or is it
it's just a leak. No, it's literally just a leak. Now that I say that, I realize why this movie is going to make what it's going to make. The villain, whoever came up with the idea, the villain is leaky water. That's the villain.
Oh my! And knowing that there's an entire culture that is water, that sounds like it's got colonizing overtones to it.
The villain is a series of leaky pipes. That's the villain.
Pixar and Disney, especially recently, has struggled with their villains. Even going back all the way to Frozen, where they didn't want Elsa to be the villain. I'm assuming here. I don't know the writing process on Frozen, but in my opinion, "Let It Go" is a villain song, and they realized through all of this that they have their main their princess character that they could be merchandising could be interpreted as the villain of this film, and so they throw Hans in there just so they can make it clear for the 14 and under crowd. No, the villain's the white guy.
Exactly. Well, in this case, they just can't have a villain, I guess, because you can't have villains in a world where everything is rationalized and everything is based on some sort of relativism, right? Nobody's completely wrong because, and determinism too. That's the other thing that Disney and their ilk have bought into, is the idea that nobody can truly be in the wrong because you don't have free agency, because you're just a sum of your experiences. So you're just acting out what you've been through. Anyway, let's get into this interview by Pixar's Pete Docter. And as we get into this, Jonas, just walk us through, because we are trying to explain how bad this is. This is bigger than just one movie. This is bigger than Elemental. This is bigger than a film which its ending is based on Frosty the Snowman. This is all the way down to the foundation of the studio. So talk to us about who is gone at Pixar.
Well, the short version is that everyone is gone at Pixar. But let's start at the beginning of that. When Pixar was founded, when Pixar was founded as an animation studio, because there's this long history of them trying to sell hardware and doing these brilliant CGI animated shorts. But when they started working on Toy Story, they had a unofficial group that eventually became known as the Brain Trust. That is a creative committee that had the ability to convene and talk about a film and talk about the story beats of a film and talk about what was landing and what was not. It was widely known as a place that they would rip apart your story and put it back together and help you to see all the beats that were working, all the ones that weren't landing. And it was supposed to be like a morbidity and mortality while the person is still living. We don't need to explain that concept if you aren't aware of the medical field. But that Brain Trust, when it started, consisted of John Lasseter, who is probably the most influential animator since Walt Disney, Andrew Stanton, who was the director of Finding Nemo and several other amazing films, Pete Docter, who is the current creative head of Pixar, and Joe Ranft, best known to children as the voice of the caterpillar, the fat caterpillar in Bug's Life. But brilliant guy.
So let's talk about that for a minute, Jonas. It sounds to me like there's one person remaining. Is that correct?
Yes, because Lasseter obviously got walked out the door. Andrew Stanton is working on filming his own film. He's still listed as part of the Brain Trust. Pete Docter is obviously here, and Joe Ranft passed away in 2005. You might notice his name in the credits of Cars. There's other people that were added here.
We're also seeing many other people leave the studio. Can we talk about that?
Yes. The most high-profile one that made headlines when 75 people were exited from Pixar recently during the recent round of layoffs. Angus MacLane, the director of Lightyear, he left the studio, he was laid off from the studio. That's a very high-level name to just be laid off. Lee Unkrich, who directed Toy Story 3 and also was the co-director on Coco, because that's kind of the point at which the company started focusing on saying, well, we have a diverse person who is going to be our primary here, and maybe they get their credit for having a diverse person in charge. But then you have someone like Lee Unkrich, who has the experience here in the row of Academy Awards there to help guide it, or Brad Bird, who directed The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2. And now he's
talking
over
about some of the biggest names in animation, period. Like in the history of animation, these people belong in that list.
Yes, these people deserve their Academy Awards. And if this is called the Brain Trust, they now have a brain drain here at Pixar, and everybody is circling the drain, and we have Pete Docter left, and maybe he doesn't seem as secure as he used to.
So the reason we bring this up is because as we're looking at what's happening with Pixar, I want people to get this in their minds. We're talking about Pixar in name only. When people say that Pixar did all of these great things, when Pixar has this legacy, no. That's the people who used to work at Pixar. That's the amazing people who now work at other places. The Pixar of today is largely unproved. They haven't done really much that has shown that they're capable.
I'll also add that as Pete Docter has become the man in charge of this studio, there's been much more of a focus on very personalized stories and very personalized concepts.
That's exactly right, with limited market appeal.
Yes.
And that's what I would say about Elemental. You know, I saw that there were places in this movie where it was beautiful, and that's why it annoys me, because better people at this could have made this into something wonderful. And at the same time, I walk away wondering, who the heck was this made for? I don't know who wants to go see this.
From a base level marketing standpoint, describe the concept of Elemental and what makes it that amazing Pixar thing to someone else.
Firewoman and water guy fall in love and stop a leak.
As opposed to, what if the entire world were populated by cars? Or what if your toys came to life? Or what is life like from the perspective of bugs? With this one, you even have to get into the concept, the medieval concept of elements, which we laugh at now from a scientific standpoint. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a movie that started out as the periodic table of elements, and the existing brain trust said, "No, that's really complicated. How are we gonna boil this down so that we don't have, I don't know, boron,
boil it down. I got it. Ha ha ha.
Warring with unobtainium or whatever." I know unobtainium's the fictional one, but
so I think it's worse. I think this is a tech display gone mad. I think they wanted to try to create someone made out of fire and someone made out of water. They lacked the technical tools to do so. They did so, and they said, "What if we made a movie all about this? Who can we find?" That's what I think happened.
Mm.
Well, let's get into this interview by Pete Docter as we get ready to wrap up, Jonas, because we need people to understand that this is not going to get better. The mainstream media is going to tell you that Pixar can get this turned around. I don't think so, and I think this interview really displays it. And, we've been trying to keep people ahead of the culture curve. We're trying to explain to people, no, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And so far, we're doing pretty well, I think, with the 6-month mark notched on our belts here at the WDW Pro channel. But here's what it says. This from Pete Docter out of Pixar. He's the head. "We made Soul for the big screen. We looked at every frame. There's so much detail and gorgeous imagery and work that was done that you can't quite appreciate on a smaller screen. However, there was a pandemic going on. On one hand, we were so thankful that there was Disney Plus so that we could release the film and people could see it. Otherwise, it would just sit on a shelf for a year and a half." By the way, that's what they would have liked. "In the long run, there's been a bit of a mixed blessing because we've trained audiences that these films will be available for you on Disney Plus." Now, let me say this, Jonas, and chime in if you wish on this part. This is why Pete Docter should not be in front of a microphone, ever. It is condescending to say that you have trained audiences. It makes your audience sound like they are dogs. It's not a good idea.
The problem here is, as we've seen with most of the features that have gone directly to Disney Plus or that have performed poorly at the box office, when they go to Disney Plus, you can see I tweeted this out. The real kick in the head here is going to be when this audience that is, oh, there it is. When the audience that's trained to watch Pixar films on Disney Plus doesn't watch Elemental there either. Do you know what's going to destroy this thing on Disney Plus? It's not really destruction. It's more walking up to a giant boulder already in motion. What are the kids going to watch, bro? Bluey. That's
right. Bluey's more understandable. Kids are not going to watch this. There's no way that kids will watch this movie. This is not made for kids, and that's why it's so strange. This is made for maybe 18-year-old single girls, maybe.
Well, and that's Disney's new audience right now. They've realized that they've burned the bridge with multi-generational viewing, and they have to go for the Disney adults that are still going and love the Disney magic. By the way, that was built by the multi-generational people who instilled it in their children. But now they're cutting off their view with a completely unrelated point. The 3 characters on screen right now, the one on the left is Lake, I do believe. And yes. Even though Lake has only about 1 line in the film, maybe you can speak to Lake's contribution to the story. But Lake is voiced by a person that identifies as neither male nor female in the film, and also has been cited as Pixar's first character to use they, them pronouns and not identify as male or female, and has I believe a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I forget which.
You can't keep track with these characters. They're all weird. They're all very weird, but it is obvious in the film that this is a non-traditional relationship. It's also obvious that it's very short so that it can be removed for other cultures. It is also obvious that the absolute displays of non-traditional aspects are only in voiceover so that it can be modified for China. So it's great virtue signaling, but it is utterly vapid, which is much like the rest of the film.
It's also a compliment, as in a complimentary thing to the idea that Pete Docter is over here stating that, and no one wants to hear a creative talk about the business reasons why their movie didn't hit. Not on opening weekend. That's not what you talk about. That's something you talk about maybe years down the road, and you can excuse yourself a little with the sheen of humility that maybe you didn't make a film that resonated with audiences. But the 1-2 punch of our audience is not interested for economic reasons, and also the audience that would have been interested 10 years ago in whatever we put out, what are they going to get? They're going to get that headline about a character that does not identify as either gender.
Well, and this is not the only place in the movie where there are characters that you can't figure out who's the masculine side or the feminine side. There are many places in this film, and it's not because these characters are just weird for the sake of being weird. It's clear that Pixar is just absorbed in this. They can't get out of their way. This film could be successful, and that's what's so irking about it. There are possibilities for it to be good. It just can't. They can't stop. They can't stop. So let's read on. In the long run, there's been a bit of a mixed blessing because we've trained audiences that these films will be available for you on Disney Plus, and it's more expensive for a family of four to go to a theater when they know they can wait, and it'll come out on the platform. By the way, that doesn't happen with any other studio's animated films. So we're trying to make sure people realize there's a great deal you're missing by not seeing it on the big screen. That will never work. That is a horrible way of thinking. If you want people to go to the big screen, you have to produce something that they must see right now, and they want their kids to be part of the cultural zeitgeist and have a family experience at an event. You are not going to convince people to go take their 5-year-olds because the fidelity of the image is better on the big screen. That will not work.
Does anything explode in this film, bro? With a big fiery explosion with laser blasts and aliens?
Well, there are plenty of explosions. There are not laser blasts, though, but there are plenty of explosions. But when your characters are made of fire, perhaps they are completely and totally explosive all the time.
Oh, and you know that parents are going to love the image of children wanting to know, what is this? What is this? Is this lighter fluid that they're putting in a baby's mouth? The people that are worried about children imitating what they see on screen are going to love seeing someone stick lighter fluid in a baby's mouth.
It is definitely bizarre. In the case of Elemental, it's a beautiful spectacle. There's details everywhere. I think you feel it more, and it's a better experience. There's the shared experience as well that you get to see it in a room with strangers, and there's something about the energy that comes from other people that makes the whole experience more vibrant and interesting. Jonas Pete Docter appears to believe that nobody's going to the theaters, that that he's got to convince them that they need to go to see movies again. That seems to be the argument. I've got news for Pete Docter. People are going to see movies, just not yours.
I guess he's not gone to see Transformers or Super Mario Brothers.
Apparently not.
Or Guardians of the Galaxy.
Or Mission Impossible. Or Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, we can keep going. It's your movies, and nobody's going to see Pete Docter. Let's continue. He says, my dad was a musician. He always talks about music as a combination of the comfort of familiarity and surprise. If it tips in either direction, it doesn't work. Well, guess what? Your stuff doesn't work. We'll skip that part for now because it's just it goes into sort of an esoteric area about how to create art. But here's where we get into the real issues. It says it does seem like certain audience members are more likely to go back from what the research has shown. I'm sorry.
The research.
Does he think we're in the middle of the pandemic?
Oh my, he's 2 years behind.
He's looking at like research from 2020. What is going on with this man? Get him away from a microphone.
This is because he lives too far away from, let's say, the Midwest or Florida or any of the rest of the world that had to move on so they could make money. California is not the rest of the world. This is the overriding theme here. California and its culture is not what the rest of the United States and North America is gone through here.
Listen to this, Jonas. This from 2023. He just did this interview. First of all, when you're young, you feel like you're immortal and danger is not for you. It does seem that audiences are going back. Mario just made $1.3 billion. I'll leave it there. That's all I can say. I mean, this man is so out of touch that it's almost impossible to fathom. And that's the thing. That's it, Jonas.
I'm sorry. And Valiant played this clip on his live stream twice last night of John Lasseter going through the process of talking about a movie. And he doesn't talk about a specific movie when he does it, but he talks about the relatability of stories. And I don't know what it's like for anyone else, but when he goes through and he talks about all the elements of the creating a world that's maybe not realistic, but believable, In my mind, I start to fill in all the great movies that I've seen, and I think about all the stories that fit that criteria and what worked and what didn't work. But at the same time, it's these things that people want to go to the theater to see a movie, and they hope it's something that they will be talking about for the rest of their lives. That, oh yeah, I was there when I saw that one. I don't think Elemental with what's his name, clever water-based name, A and
Wade
clever
Ripple.
I know what the name is. I'm mocking it.
It's just so bad, though. I mean, even that name is bad. Wade
but
Ripple.
At some point, they get so clever that they forget that they have to be entertaining. I get it. Clever is nice, but you have to connect with the audience first. This looks like generic Pixar movie number, I don't know, 23. I might even be right on that number.
These are now passion projects for art graduates in Southern California. And the excuses are now Southern California excuses. This
right.
no
And
longer works.
If you look at the a spark short or a spark story or whatever it is, if it happens to be removed from Disney Plus now, it is very clear that they said we want personal stories from underrepresented groups. In and of itself, that is not a bad thing. But when they say we want that more than we want the film to be entertaining, and so they want to say that they're not pushing back on an underrepresented group, so they don't push back and say, but it also needs to be entertaining, then they have failed as corporate artists who need to feed families. It is malfeasance on the corporate level to say, we're just going to let this happen and we're not going to be worried about if the movie is entertaining. 7,000 people just lost their jobs, and probably more, because no one was willing to say,
far more on the way.
You know what? Maybe you should push this just a little bit so that the audience can enjoy your film.
Exactly. And it's not going to get better for Pixar. The next film comes out in spring. That's going to be Elio. By the name only, you should be able to figure out that's going to fail. You can't even tell what it's about, right? Versus Cars. What's Cars about? It's about cars. What's Incredibles about? Incredible people. What's Elio about? Oh, who knows? But that's coming. And then we'll have the real test when Inside Out 2, if it comes out on schedule, it'll be out in a year from now. And if that does poorly, then audiences will be abandoning the sequel. And that is currently the media, which got this wrong for years and years, right? So the media now has to figure out a way to explain how they were wrong. So they're going to tell you that it's because families are no longer going to original IP. That's the new line.
You know what it says to me? When they say we're going to do Inside Out 2, we're going to do Frozen 3, and we're going to do Toy Story 5, it is them apologizing to the audience and saying, we promise it'll be like the last one. But they don't have the same people working on it.
That's exactly right. Pixar in name only, and very rapidly becoming Disney in name only. Jonas, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Well, you can find me here on the Pro Show on Thursdays 5 to 7, or I'm an investigative reporter for That Park Place. I do like to chill out on Twitter. I say chill out. Usually there's some spicy takes on there. And I have a channel where I like to go through everything woke in children's properties so that I can help parents maybe understand what they're maybe not aware of when putting their kids in front of places like Disney Plus or Peacock or HBO Max.
I have a feeling that Elemental will one day be on that channel. Folks, we hope you enjoy content like this. We're trying to keep you ahead of the culture curve. We want to give you the truth and help you know where the world is going in entertainment. Of course, it's what we wait on each and every day. We want to go see the next big movie. We want to see the next big show. And so it's important. And on that same line, I will be breaking a major exclusive on this channel regarding Indiana Jones and some rumors that came out. You do not want to miss that video coming up shortly. Well, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. And if you want to go one step beyond, think about becoming a member. It's the price of a soda, and you get all kinds of exclusive content each and every month. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Floral, it's time for you to walk the plank.
What? Why?
Cuz you haven't subscribed to WDW Pro yet. Nor bookmark thatparkplace.com on your web browser to get great articles from great contributors.
What?